Hey, this is Sam Black with my first match with Bedlam Reveler Burn in Modern. I'm on play, and I have a pretty solid looking hand. I'm going to keep this. And Monastery Swiftspear being my only 1-mana creature, I definitely can't do better than that on turn 1, so I'm definitely going to play it before playing the Probe. Alright, so we'll lead with the Mountain, play the Swiftspear, pay life to probe my opponent. I guess. So there's an argument to wait to play the Probe, which is that I might draw another Swiftspear, but I think it's better to play it because my opponent might kill my Swiftspear. I think if I had a second Swiftspear in hand, it would definitely be better to wait, but in this kind of spot, I do think it's best to play it on turn 1. So my opponent has Brushland, Cavern, Displacer, Forest, Path, Coast. So just Path, and then turn 3 Displacer. Right. I'm well positioned to deal with Displacer with Searing Blaze. Bedlam Reveler is pretty good against Path to Exile, as the additional mana will help me Reveler faster. That's a lot of Rift Bolts. In some spots, since I know that I'm going to want a Searing Blaze, the Displacer, it would be worth considering not playing a land in order to hold the land to Searing Blaze. But in this spot where I have a bunch of Rift Bolts and a Bedlam Reveler that I'm trying to turn on, I think it's very important to get 2 of these Rift Bolts suspended. So I am going to play the land. I'll just have to hope to draw another land at some point, or another burn spell that can target the Displacer. Or just get to the point where my opponent has to chump block by the time Displacer is down, which seems entirely possible. Yeah, my opponent paths, seeing that it's going to be a lot of damage next turn if they don't. But conveniently I get a free point in by attacking first. So now I'm going to suspend the Rift Bolt, and I have to evaluate whether I want to play the Sacred Foundry or hold it for the Searing Blaze. The advantage to playing it is that I'm going to have 4 spells in my graveyard, and Bedlam Reveler will then cost 4 mana. So if I play it, I will have 4 mana, and I will be able to Bedlam Reveler and then play a land that I draw. Or if I draw a land, I can play the land and then play Searing Blaze if my opponent plays a creature, which I expect them to because they have the Displacer, at which point Bedlam Reveler will only cost 3, and then I can play the Bedlam Reveler. So if I draw a land, playing the land is great. If I don't draw the land, then I can just play the Bedlam Reveler and get rid of the Searing Blaze. So I think it's correct to play the land. There's the Displacer, and because of the Searing Blaze, I'm just going to do 3 damage to my opponent. I drew Swift Spear. So I can either play the Reveler, or I can play the Swift Spear and attack, and if my opponent blocks, I can play the Searing Blaze. And then I'm trading the Swift Spear for the Displacer, and getting 1 damage in, and then the Reveler will cost 3 the next turn. I'm not sure this is right, but I'm just going to play the Reveler. And I'll play the land, and pay 2 life, and I'll just Lava Spike my opponent. And then the Lightning Bolt is lethal. And I don't really know how my opponent can get out of this. There's no reason to, theoretically my opponent could make me discard the Lightning Bolt by displacing the Bedlam Reveler, but then I get to draw 3 new cards, and I'm almost certainly going to draw something lethal if my opponent does that, and they have no reason to believe that 3 random cards for me is better than 1 random card. I just have whatever's left over from the Bedlam Reveler. They have no reason to know that it's a Lightning Bolt. And I'm obviously nowhere near dead, so I really don't see any way my opponent could possibly get out of this. Well, that'll get the Lightning Bolts. So that's definitely the first step to my opponent winning this game. But they are still at 3. I could bluff an attack, but my opponent should just block because any spell is lethal anyway. So I'm just going to play the Swift Spear and pass. Obviously, the Swift Spear having haste has some value to hold on to it, but I think I can imagine the game going in a way where I'd want to block, maybe. If my opponent plays a Reality Smasher and attacks, I want to be able to double block Thought-Knot Seer, I guess. It's a good attack. Alright. And this is lethal. Clearly, I should have thought of Thought-Knot Seer as the way that my opponent could win that game if I'd just drawn lands from there or something. Alright, so I know that before Ivugin was banned, Eldrazi was a really bad matchup for Burn. Part of that is that Eidolon of the Great Revel can be a significant liability, as they can just play creatures that cost more than 3 mana, and they're also good at blocking. So I'm just going to cut those for burn spells and another Bedlam Reveler, and I believe that I'll be much better positioned against Eldrazi than those burn decks were, because blockers are not nearly as effective against me. My only creatures are Monastery Swiftspear, which can get some points in before the blockers come down and can get large enough to get over them, and Bedlam Reveler, which draws cards and can get large enough to get over them. And I don't have anything like Goblin Guide running into Matter Reshaper or any of that. And so they basically just need to race me. And I feel fairly well prepared for the race, so we'll see how it goes. This hand is really bad. This hand is much better. Yep, that's the kind of thing I want. They say you're always supposed to kill that kind of stuff, and I think I'm willing to believe it. I'm just going to get a mountain here, save a little life. Bump. Alright, no bump. Some options here are Swiftspear, Suspend Riftbolt, or tap out for Riftbolt and attack. Tap out for Riftbolt is pretty bad if my opponent has Stubborn Denial again. Kind of like the idea of just playing a Swiftspear suspending the Rift Bolt, playing tap land, and passing the turn. And then I get the prowess trigger on both of these, and might get another prowess trigger, get a bunch of damage in. It does let my opponent play another blocker, so could definitely go badly. This is 8. That's just under half my life. I think I should take it. And the displacer theoretically isn't changing the clock. If I hit my opponent for 3 down to 11, if I draw another burn spell, that's 8. And then each of these is 6. That puts my opponent at 2. They don't have lethal unless they have another one of those things, and then I can draw another burn spell. I think I'm just going to go to the face with this. Yeah, so win if I draw probe into burn spell. Or Metamorphose into burn spell. Well, this is interesting. Now if I Helix the Displacer, I don't die to another Reality Smasher. If I Helix my opponent, I do die to another Reality Smasher. But I think if I Helix the Displacer, I just don't have enough damage. My opponent would still be at 5. I think I need to get them into range of a single burn spell. I'm going to keep the Sacred Foundry in my hand so that Searing Blaze is lethal. I just have to hope my opponent doesn't have another Reality Smasher. It's not a Reality Smasher, so unless my opponent has a counter spell, I win if I draw a burn spell. Lightning Helix here is obviously a lot better than Eidolon of the Great Revel would have been. I think my opponent should just attack with Reality Smasher unless they have something. If they attack with a Displacer, then any spell is lethal, which means if I draw a Probe or Metamorphose, they die. But they might be thinking that all of my spells kill them anyway, and so they have to just put me on nothing and leave one Displacer back, but then they also die to Swift Spear. Settled on what I think is the right line. Alright, keeping it interesting. So this would have been lethal if my opponent had made the attack. Displacer Drowner, so I win if I draw a spell. Well, burn spell. And there's Lightning Bolt. Very close game, obviously. Could have just bricked there and I would have lost. And my opponent, yeah, there we go. Alright, that's the match.